Hi, everyone. Jane Monreal here with you. 9 o'clock. It is a Thursday morning, and you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Today is day one of the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow. Very exciting time. Things kick off, and it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day after all of this rain. Looking at some traffic there. Beautiful shot, though, of the uptown skyline. And not too bad. No complaints this morning as we are all about spring and golf. I got my spring, kind of a golf-like
that's what I'm saying.
vibe going on there, right?
You got a golf vibe.
You got some golf vibes there,
it's got some
Car.
wild animals on it, but sure, yeah.
Are there wild animals?
Yeah, you got
Let's
some
look.
birds and some.
Oh no, that's
butterflies
all about.
and some things.
Some things, it is all good. Beautiful day, though, as we take a look around town. And, if you are headed out to Quail Hollow, you might hit some traffic. We've got some delays and some cats rides that are offering.
Especially around Bojangles, too.
Oh,
I think
forget
that's
about
where they're shuttling to and from for parking and stuff.
Yeah,
so
good to know.
If you live on that side of town, we have a producer that does.
And they said, all
yeah,
right.
It's
so
already a headache.
It's going to be okay, though, because
it's going to be okay.
Because, this is great for the economy. It's great for folks to visit Charlotte. Definitely nice for a lot of VIPs in town. Our Danielle Stein, who does sports on the weekend, she is covering things at Quail Hollow, and she actually spoke to ESPN's Scott Van Pelt, if you've watched. He's a big golfer, and he's a tall man.
He is a tall man.
We want to bring this interview for you right now and get you caught up here from Quail Hollow. It's all about PGA today. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Welcome to Charlotte, but also for the first time I hear, welcome to Quail Hollow Club, Scott Van Pelt. What are your initial impressions of the club so far?
It's awfully wet. It's really wet. Thank you so much for the many, many inches of rain that welcomed us. My feet are sopping wet. My shoes are ruined. But the golf course is really wet. The greens are really firm, which is kind of interesting, but the golf course is just what I thought it would be. I mean, I've watched it for years on television. Oddly, in all my years covering golf, I hadn't been here, so that's why I was just out walking with some of the guys to get a sense of the course, because when you're going to be on all day, you'd like to have some idea what you're talking about. But loved the golf course is awesome. The people are incredible. We went to a place called Moosehead Grill, unsolicited plug, had wings, fantastic, and we'll be off and running Thursday morning.
We're going to ask you more about those wings later, but I know you just walked with JT. When you're out there from a broadcaster's perspective, what are you looking for as you're doing these walkthroughs and learning a course for the first time that you're going to be taking into your call for this week?
We're on the air for hours. I mean, it's hours and hours and hours and hours. So what I want to know, and you're walking with Maverick McNeely, Max Homa, Justin Thomas. Justin and Max have both won here. They can help give me intel on what's your aim point on this hole, what bunkers are you trying to deal with, what's an absolutely dead spot on the course. I'm staying away from this. I'll try to drive 14, the par 4, or I won't. Anything that might help the viewer at home understand the insight of the process from the player's perspective. And then also just walking it, the rough's actually not that deep, but it's pretty thick. The rough on the side of 14 would probably stop a golf ball if it were to roll there. I mean, you just want to educate yourself so that when you're describing the action, you're able to describe it from the perspective of having walked it and seen it. And like a football game is pretty simple, right? It's a 100-yard field. We get it. Well, every golf course is different. There are 18 unique holes on every course you play. So I just want to understand them as best as I can so that as I'm trying to explain what we're seeing, you can provide the context. So also it's just fun. These are great guys it's a fun walk. Everybody's busting each other's chops, having a laugh. It's a great way to spend a morning.
I know you were mentioning that a lot of these golfers have golfed here before, but here for a PGA championship, it's been a bit. Justin was even saying it doesn't really carry over that he's the last winner of this event here because it's changed so much. It is a different month. It was Bermuda versus everything is different. So What are the challenges that the PGA Championship presents that it's in a different location year after year as a major?
Well, you're right. Everything you said is true, and there's a familiarity though that these players do have with this place. I think that helps a lot because, for instance, in the last say 3 years, we went to Kiowa, we went to Oak Hill in New York, we went to Valhalla last year in Louisville, and players maybe had played there some they hadn't played at all. Here you have so much more information about the golf course. It's like a book that you've at least read, or at least you've thumbed through, or maybe you've read it and you've read it and you know it well. But there is the difference. There's a Wanamaker Trophy. A major championship provides a buzz that's just different than a regular week. And this isn't a regular tour stop. This is a big time tour stop. But it's a PGA Championship just takes a magnifying glass and adds it, because I always say these weeks are kingmakers. You win one of these and you're remembered forever. And you know, JT's a PGA champion here and at Southern Hills, where we were a couple years before that. When you win these, you become a player who they talk about 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. They'll probably talk about Rory 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, who's won here 4 times, but there's some winners on you know, non-major years that maybe they're not remembered in the same way that the winner this week will be remembered. So that's really the magnifier. The fact that there's a Wanamaker, the fact that not us, but just the golf world pays much closer attention starting Thursday morning to this event than they would when it was, you know, just the event at Quail Hollow. And I want to make that clear. It's never just, this is not a garden variety tour event. Johnny does a hell of a job. But this week's different. He'd tell you that.
In your role with SportsCenter, you talk about a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Golf is clearly a passion of yours.
For sure.
Where does that begin? I know you had stops at the Golf Channel
Yep.
as well. Where did the passion for the sport begin?
I got really lucky, and I got a chance to intern at the Golf Channel when it just began. And from there, I stumbled my way onto the air, and I met a guy named Tiger Woods. That was a good dude to meet. He became who he became, and you know, I was as you may be able to tell, I played basketball and baseball. Golf was something I enjoyed, but it wasn't my thing. But by being involved in the game for now 30 years, I mean, I have such an appreciation for the history, the difficulty, the ethic that's part of being a great champion. So it started as a happy accident, and now, you know, all these years later, it's something I'm really passionate about doing. It's such a thrill and an honor to be the person who's getting to host, you know, from a major championship.
In terms of the broadcasting of it, how do you find it different in terms of covering golf compared to covering other sports?
It's not as different as you might think. I mean, there's a certain, I think, you know, it's like rooms in the house. There's rooms in the house where your rec room in the basement maybe. Like I've got little kids, like they can go down there and you can take a ball and whatever happens, happens. And there's rooms in the house that we probably don't take our shoes off. I think that's kind of like golf. You know, Augusta National is a place that has a certain way about it. And that's not to say that they make you behave a certain way. It's just everybody just seems to be on their best behavior.
Your shoes are off in Augusta.
No, I'd say I keep my shoes on. I make sure I keep them. I make sure I don't like act like you know, I don't. I'm very comfortable there, but I'm also, there's a respect that you have for this, for the venue and the surroundings that's just different. Like you go to, we're both Terps, you go to the Xfinity Center for a Big Ten game, you're going to act like a wild person. Well, I think we'll see some of that out here this week. I think Charlotte is going to be absolutely ready to go, nuts off the deep end, and I think this place will feel like what it is, a big time venue that has a lot of juice. Every event's different. The Open Championship is altogether different even than the U.S. Open or the Masters. It's the oldest championship in the game, and they have a reverence for the sport there. They don't just cheer when the ball is airborne, and they'll cheer for a shot that's not nearly as close to the hole because they know it was great. Here, people are probably just going to cheer if the ball's airborne because they're fired up to see the best in the world. So there's similarities certainly, but each venue, each major is different. I expect Quail Hollow to be more raucous than most.
Do you have any predictions for the upcoming week in terms of maybe a sleeper pick that people might not be thinking that you might think be doing pretty well this week?
I always say Sepp Straka, and then Sepp won last week, so it's hard to say Sepp's a sleeper. I mean, everybody's wide awake on Sepp, but he's a hell of a player. My guy, Keith Mitchell, who I know it keeps playing great in first rounds of events. He's played well here. maybe my guy who they call Cashmere, maybe he'd be a guy that could be a somewhat off the radar pick, although he was top 10 last week. But look, you don't have to squint real hard this week. I think it's bombers. I think it's so wet. Rory, who's won here 4 times, he's going to murder the ball off the tee. I picked DeChambeau for our ESPN. They ask us, who do you like? Sure. It's 156 guys. I'm supposed to be able to pick one. I picked Rory at Augusta, which wasn't exactly a long shot pick, but I picked Bryson because I think his length is something that is going to be such a massive advantage here this week. But there's a reason Rory's played so well here, because it's a big ballpark, as they say, and he's got the length to make it a smaller one. He'll be in the mix. Scotty Scheffler will be in the mix. I don't think you're going to see some total wild card. You'll see names that maybe you didn't expect Thursday and Friday. Come Sunday, you're gonna know the names that are on the first page of the leaderboard. I'm sure of it.
So Sunday, we're standing just off of the 18 green right now. This is going to be, of course, a place where someone will be having a pretty emotional moment, getting that win. As a broadcaster, how do you kind of encapsulate the emotions that a golfer might be feeling as they're getting a win here at a PGA Championship or any major?
If it's somebody that's never won, it's a total, your life's changed. Every bit of your work has been realized. Maybe the thing you didn't know you could do, you did. And when that happens, it's really, really fun to see, because it really does change probably who the guy sees in the mirror that Monday morning, right? Like, if you've never done it, you wonder, can I? And I think what people learn is they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to play perfect golf from Thursday morning to Sunday night to win. And when that player finds that out, it's like this epiphany. Wow, I didn't have to be perfect, and I won a major. And I think it's really affirming that all the work was worthwhile. And if it's Rory, then now, hey, we got a Grand Slam to talk about. If it's Scotty, all right, he's halfway to the Slam. You know, I think it depends on who the person is, like the feeling. Because the first timer, I always love to see it, just because I wonder just how much joy and relief there is in that. But whoever it is will be incredibly fulfilled and satisfied that the hard work ended up with that gigantic trophy.
All right, Scotty Van Pelt talking to our Danielle Stein about the PGA Championship that kicks off today. He's got his picks in, sort of, kinda, but saying that, you know what, Quail Hollow is going to turn up a little bit tonight. We can expect that. You know, why not? Charlotte has the juice, as we see the.
And it was wet.
And it was wet.
His
yes.
shoes were ruined.
And
socks.
Hopefully he didn't have those expensive shoes.
You know.
That you know the ESPN folks like to wear.
Yeah, of course.
Because they got
Mickey Mouse money.
They got a few more Benjamins in their wallet that they can spend for the Gucci shoes. All right. Well, this is something that money can't buy. Beautiful shot of Uptown. Enjoy the day. We welcome you to the Queen City, as well as a little bit of traffic heading to and from Charlotte. It's worth it, though. It's a gorgeous day. It's a spring day, a little sticky, but no complaints from this Floridian. Or Carlene, who's from South Carolina, right?
No complaints. Beautiful day.
All right, we'll take it. We're almost to the weekend. Everyone's looking to the golf course.
It's going to heat up, too.
Yeah, it's going to heat up.
Yep.
It's a good time to jump into the pool.
Yes.
It's finally open.
Finally get into the pool.
Pool and the river, little rafting, little float.
Oh, yeah. Love.
And perhaps maybe wash the car, wash the truck.
I need to wash my car.
Same.
So
I'm
bad.
with you, girl. All right, and then you can sit in this traffic.
But I'll look good.
That's right.
My bug will look good in the traffic. That's all that matters.
That's true. You're always going to look good, Miss Carlene. All right, let's go to the state. State government is busy this morning. They are meeting for the appropriations meeting here, discussing things like education and the budget. Let's check in with them now here on Live Impact News on WCNC+.
This eliminates that division, 12 FTE. 6, divorce filing fee was adjusted from the Senate budget. The Senate budget made the divorce filing fee a total of $235 when you go to court. Now the House budget has it at $275. The marriage license fee was adjusted as well. The Senate had a total of $115 if you want to get married, and the House had $100. These fees are collected and support domestic violence centers, and so this increase in both of these fees generates an additional $4 million for domestic violence centers, for a total of $8 million each year of the biennium. Number 9 is a new item, utilities. This is just over $1 million in each year for DOA for increased utility cost of the buildings that they are operating. Turning the page, page F8, item 12, Workforce Development IT Program. This is a new program that is supported by the Information Technology Reserve to focus on STEM-focused competitions and student engagement, STEM to career pathways. According to your rules, number 11, you cannot touch those funds. It's coming from a reserve that has been decided, and that cannot be amended. And that is all for the Department of Administration. My teammates and I will go back and forth as we cover different agencies. And Jacob is next.
Good morning, y'all. On page F19 is where the Office of Administrative Hearings begins. So I'll cover that agency. And again, just talking about the items that the House has either modified from the Senate or included brand new. The first of those items would be item 21, their lease budget. The Senate budget cut their lease by about $150,000 in both years, where the House only cuts the second year by about $140,000. Item 22, the Rules Automated Tracking System Replacement, is an IT project that the House funded in the second year at $1.3 million recurring, whereas the Senate was $1.4 million. Item 23, the Rules Review Commission additional staff. This is 2 additional lawyers for the Rules Review Commission to do their 10-year review of the rules of the state, and the House budget fully funds these positions in both years, whereas the Senate begins these positions on January 1 of this upcoming fiscal year. Item 24, financial officer, is the same change from the Senate, where the House budget fully funds the position in the first year, but the Senate budget begins it on January 1. And that is all the new items from Office of Administrative Hearings, so I'll hand it to Catherine for the auditor.
Turning now to page F27. Oh, he is taller than I am. The first item to draw your attention to is item 30, additional positions for the auditor. This is 5 additional positions at $750,000, modified from the Senate. You may remember that the Senate budget had the DAVE Act, which included 45 positions. The other item to show you is item 32, third-party software, which would provide funds for a reserve to purchase a third-party software platform for auditing, analyzing, and reporting financial data. Again, this one would fall under Rule 11 and cannot be amended. Back to Jacob.
Probably shouldn't sit down. So moving on to the Office of Budget and Management now, where the changes begin on page, F40. So there were no changes between the Senate and the House, or no new additional items or modified items in their sort of general budget code, but there were changes in their special appropriations budget code, which is on page F40. So item 36, Barton College, this is a new item for the House, $6.9 million non-recurring to support their nursing program. Item 37, Campbell University, this is $1 million non-recurring to support their health programs. Item 38 is $1.5 million non-recurring to High Point University to support their health program. Item 40, Mount Olive University, is $3.35 million non-recurring to support their agriculture, aviation, and nursing programs. Item 41, North Carolina Association of Regional Councils of Government. This is $1 million non-recurring to support healthy financial management of counties and municipalities. Item 42, North Carolina Indian Cultural Center, $1 million non-recurring just as a directed grant. It's new in the House. On the next page, F41, Purple Heart Homes. This is a modified item in the Senate budget. They received $1.5 million in each year of the biennium. In the House budget, they're receiving just under $1.1 million in the first year, non-recurring, and $140,000 in the second. And the source of those funds is different. Item 47 is new in the House budget. Wake County Public School System, $2 million non-recurring in each year of the biennium to support mental health services for students. And item 48, Winston-Salem Speedway, $1.5 million non-recurring for stadium improvements. This is new in the House budget as well. One other thing I will mention here, page F45 now. So moving into OSBM's IT budget code. IBIS stabilization, which is item 53. These are funds to stabilize the current budget system that OSBM uses for the whole state. The Senate included $850,000 non-recurring in each year of the biennium, and the House included $850,000 in the first year. And then on page F46, rural healthcare grants. This is a new House item, 12.5 million non-recurring that it's being transferred to HHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, to give out directed grants to 2 different nonprofit entities. And then lastly for OSBM on page 47, F47, you'll see Hurricane Helene. So this is sort of the Hurricane Helene fund, and you'll see 2 different transfers into this fund. One from the State Emergency Response and Disaster Relief Fund, that's item 56, 200 million non-recurring in the first year. And then 500 million from NC Innovation, that's being transferred into the Helene Fund in item 57. That is all for Office of State Budget and Management. The next agency would be the Controller, but there were no new items from the House, so Catherine will talk about elections.
Oh, thank you. Turning to page F61. Item 64 was modified from the Senate. This is budget positions. The Senate budget eliminated all 5 budget positions currently at Board of Elections. Item 64 here eliminates 3. 65 creates exempt positions. 7, these exempt positions would report to the executive director. 66, 1.5 million non-recurring for litigation funds. 67, making 3 temporary positions permanent for $610,000. And 68 was modified from the Senate budget. This is software modernization for their SEAM system and campaign finance upgrades. The Senate budget included $13 million for this, and the House has 15. One other item under elections to point you towards is on page F64, item 73. This shows the receipt of HAVA federal funds and allows those funds to be appropriated out and used for purposes that it's already being used for, but just additional funding coming in this fiscal year. Help America Vote Act. Thank you. I need my LOAs. Turning to the General Assembly, page F70.
Hey everyone, Jane Monreal here with you on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus as we listen in live now to the North Carolina state leaders, the House Appropriations Committee meeting. Looking up there on the right-hand side, top right corner of your screen, a court appearance for a judge out of Milwaukee who is accused of assisting an undocumented immigrant. So Judge Hannah Dugan advised of her charges, and she is to make her first court appearance, preliminary hearing and arraignment and plea that is set for this morning. But you see demonstrators outside. The president arriving in Abu Dhabi just hours ago, right now meeting with the United Emirates Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, and they are at a mosque right now. So this is the president's trip, the week there in the Mideast. He is only the 2nd American president to visit the United Arab Emirates. And so right now he is just doing a little meet and greet there. No audio as of now, but if we do hear any kind of mic situation, we'll bring that to you here live on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Yesterday he was in Qatar after arriving in Saudi Arabia on Monday. So a packed schedule this week as today's trip is going to be in Abu Dhabi and speaking with a number of leaders there. Let's go back to the United States now. We have the Karen Reed retrial that is getting underway early on this Thursday morning. It is out of Dedham, Massachusetts, and we're going to bring this to you here as they enter week 4 on WCNC Plus. They're just showing some presentations, evidence there on the screen, but it looks like they have their witness on the stand with the judge presiding. You're again listening to Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
No, I'm sorry, I do not.
Okay. I wasn't certain whether we had that parlance. So my question is, to your knowledge, was there any testing of any taillight alleged to have been found at 34 Fairview for biological material?
No, there was not.
And could you just please state what your definition is, inclusion, when you refer to biological material?
Those items were not processed in the criminalistics unit for any type of biological, meaning they would not tested for blood, semen, saliva, or a skin cell collection.
I'm sorry, I missed the last part that you...
Or a skin cell collection.
Now turning and changing topics, there was a T-shirt and a hoodie of the decedent. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And are you okay with my parlance of T-shirt, the yellow or orange T-shirt on the one hand, and then the gray hoodie sweatshirt? Is that an acceptable parlance for you?
Yes.
So with regard to those two items, if I could, Your Honor, have published what is already in evidence, Exhibit 151 and 150, and Mr. Wolk, if we could please put those side by side. Alrighty, so is it correct that what's on the left is the right sleeve of what we refer to as the hoodie, and on the right is the, what color would you like to call that T-shirt?
Orange, please.
All right, so the orange T-shirt. Is that what we're looking at up on the screen?
Yes, so it's the right sleeve of the gray hoodie and the back of the orange T-shirt.
Thank you. Am I correct that you included a handwritten note on your report that you found, quote, debris from each of these two items, or from these two items collectively?
I don't handwrite notes on my report, so I'm just confused about where you're asking that.
Okay, I'll ask a different question. Hopefully it will be clear. Did you find debris on either of those two items of clothing?
Yes, I performed a debris collection on each of those items and combined them.
I'm sorry, it's not your fault, it's mine. There's a HVAC noise I can't hear. If you
So
could
can we
speak up
turn
just
the
a
air
little.
conditioning off, please?
I'm okay with
I can
it.
speak
It's
up.
just
I'm
if you could
sorry.
speak up a little. I don't want to
Of course.
discomfort people. Can you move the mic?
Yes, I can speak up. My
If
apologies.
you could speak a little louder, that'd be great. Thank
Yes.
you. Can you repeat your answer, please?
Can you repeat the question? I apologize.
Sure. Did you find debris on these articles of clothing?
Yes, I took scrapings from each of these items of clothing and combined the debris. Yes.
With regard to scrapings, can you describe how the term scrapings relates to these two items of these two items that are on the screen?
Yes. Scraping is the mechanism I use to remove any debris that was remaining on both the sweatshirt and the T-shirt. I held each up Over my lab bench, I took a long metal spatula and scraped any debris that was on these items into a small glassine packet.
Is it correct that you do not know where the debris came from specifically, other than it came from one or both items of both of these two items?
Yes, that's correct.
So the debris could be from just the hoodie, it could be just from the t-shirt, or it could be a combination of the both?
Yes, the items were packaged together, so they were already commingled. So there was no way for me to determine which debris came from which item, and it would be misleading to label them as such, so I combined them.
Exactly where my next point was going to go to, thank you, and my next questions. So what, if anything, were these two items contained in when you got them?
They were contained in a brown paper bag, and they may have been contained in a larger box, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
So when you got them and you saw them for the first time, using your term, they were commingled together, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And was there any debris in the bottom of the bag?
There may have been. When I examine something on my bench, I also shake out the bag to ensure that nothing is left behind and that everything is examined and accounted for.
Now, am I also correct that there is no description of the actual debris that you found? For example, you didn't specify whether it was little fibers, little hair, little pieces of this or that. Do I have that correct?
Correct. I did not do any examination on it. I just packaged it.
And therefore, you didn't note whether any of the debris was a plastic or a plasticine nature, correct?
Correct. That would not be part of my analysis.
And there was no marker put on any part of the debris that was recovered. Is that also correct?
I label the debris with an item number. I'm not sure what you mean by marker, if that's what you mean.
Parts of debris, in other words, there wasn't separate identification or markers for separate pieces of debris.
No, I did not separate out the debris.
There was no photograph taken of the debris?
Not by me, no.
Do you have knowledge of whether there was a photograph taken of the debris by anybody?
I do not.
So you have, as you sit here today, you have no knowledge that there's a photograph of the debris?
That's correct, I do not.
When you received the hoodie and the t-shirt that's depicted as 150 and 151, they came in together, commingled with some debris at the bottom in an evidence bag. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if there was debris at the bottom of the bag. What I can say is that there was debris on the items, and I did shake out the bag. I don't have a memory of anything coming out of the bag. I don't know.
So there could have been debris at the bottom of the bag when you shook it out. You just don't recall.
Yes, correct.
If we could, Your Honor, please have Exhibit 154 already in evidence published. And let's keep it there for a moment, and then I'm going to ask Mr. Wolk for you to zoom in. Ms. Hartnett, do you recognize this generally, and then I'm going to have it zoom in so you can read it, as an evidence bag?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Wolk, could you please zoom in starting from the top so that Ms. Hartnett can fairly read this? And if you could, Ms. Hartnett, just take a moment to read it, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, but I want you to have a fair opportunity to read it. Let me know when you're done.
Okay.
And if we can then scroll down, Mr. Wolk, so that Ms. Hartnett can fairly read the rest of what's on there.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Wolk, if you could just leave it where it is now. With Your Honor's permission, I don't see a need to keep the lights off. Can have that on, but if Ms. Hartnett needs it,
please.
You'll just let us know. So, is this the evidence bag that the T-shirt and the hoodie were in when you received those items?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
You see the name of collected by someone there. Can you read who that states it was collected by?
Yes.
And state what that is.
It says TPR Proctor.
And are you able to conclude what the TPR stands for?
Generally, we use that to abbreviate trooper.
Right. So that is former Trooper Proctor that it says collected by, correct?
That is what's written on the bag, yes.
And the date of the collection, if we can just, Mr. Wolf, just focus in on that. Thank you. The date of the collection is January 29th, 2022, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it a fair conclusion from this evidence bag and your experience on the matter to conclude that former Trooper Proctor was the person who collected the evidence and put it in the bag?
I have no knowledge of who actually collected it and put it in the bag. I can only read what I see on the monitor.
In terms of, and if we could, Mr. Wolk, please take that down and put back up the side-to-side images and depictions of the T-shirt and the hoodie. Do you know the journey, if you will, of those two items before you received them?
No, I do not.
The debris that you ultimately saw on the hoodie and the T-shirt, and that which may or may not have also been additionally in the bag, do you know where that debris would have been picked up from?
No, I don't know the source of the debris.
And you were not provided with information as to the potential source of that debris, correct?
No.
Were you aware of whether or not the debris, whether those items had been on the floor of an ambulance or a floor of a hospital?
No, I did not have any information like that.
Is it important to maintain the sanitary condition of evidence generally to avoid contamination?
We do our best to avoid contamination once we receive items into evidence, yes.
And what are some of the protocols that are used to avoid contamination of evidence, generally?
Generally, wearing gloves, putting items in packaging, bleaching any materials or utensils that we're going to use, or using disposable materials, sterile materials when possible or necessary. We also wear lab coats when processing evidence.
Is another protocol or technique to separate out pieces of evidence to prevent cross-contamination?
Sometimes we will separate pieces of evidence. If the items are already mixed in with each other, then the items are kept together, can be kept together.
Do you know the chain of custody of either the hoodie or the T-shirt?
I only have record of the chain of custody from when it was delivered to the lab.
So before any delivery to the lab, you do not have knowledge of the chain of custody of either of those two items?
No, I just know which detective unit dropped the items off.
And which detective unit was that?
Norfolk Detective Unit.
What I would like to now do is to, we can now take that down. Thank you, Mr. Wolp. I want to sort of speciate, if you will, separate out the evidence that you have talked about so far so that it's clear what you submitted and what may have been submitted by others to the lab. Do you understand that concept generally?
Yes.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do is to give categories, and if you would be kind enough to say, I submitted it by some other person, that would be helpful. Any items that were collected from the vehicle, who submitted those to the lab or brought them to the lab?
I did.
The swabs from the red Solo cups.
I submitted the swabs.
The drinking glass that you were presented with at Canton PD.
I submitted that item.
The two clothing items that we just saw on the screen, the hoodie and the t-shirt.
Those were submitted by the Norfolk Detective Unit.
Were there also any fingernails that were part of the investigation and that you had knowledge of?
Yes.
Describe what those were, please.
Fingernails may be collected at the medical examiner's office, and they're clippings from the top of the fingernails of the victim.
And were those submitted to the lab?
Yes.
And by whom?
By the Norfolk Detective Unit.
And the phrase known blood standards, are you familiar with that phrase?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors, please, what that means?
A known blood standard is a sample of blood that is collected from an identified person.
And which person were those known blood standards related to your knowledge in this matter?
We received a tube of blood that was identified as belonging to John O'Keefe.
And with regard to the fingernails and the known blood standards, who submitted those to the lab?
The Norfolk County Detective Unit.
So am I correct to conclude that for those items that you submitted to the lab, you knew about, you knew sort of their journey, if you will, but that those items that were submitted by, I think you referred to as Norfolk County, was that your parlance?
Yes, correct.
You don't have knowledge about those other than that they were submitted by them?
Prior to them arriving at the lab, correct. I have no knowledge of what occurred, where they were stored or anything like that before that.
And no knowledge of those items not submitted by you would include no knowledge of the chain of custody of those items, correct?
No knowledge prior to them being received into the lab. That is correct.
Your Honor, if I may have a moment, please. It'll probably be 30 to 45 seconds. Thank you. Bear with me, please.
You are watching live right now the fourth week of the Karen Reed retrial. It looks like Ms. Reed's defense attorney asking for a moment here, less than a minute, as they speak to the witness, Maureen Hartnett, a forensic expert who is on the stand discussing some of the evidence that's been gathered. Let's go ahead and check back in live now on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
So the questions I have for Ms. Hartnett at this time, thank you for answering my questions, Ms. Hartnett.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Brennan, any redirect?
Yes.
You mentioned that you had an opportunity to observe a paper bag that had red Solo cups in it,
Yes, that's correct.
and the red Solo cups had a coloring of red in the cups.
Yes.
You'd never seen blood preserved in cups like that before?
Objection, Your Honor.
To the form. Sustained.
Had you ever seen blood stored in cups like that before?
No.
Do you know the circumstances of storing that blood?
Can you rephrase that question, please?
When the blood was stored in the cups, do you know the circumstances?
Sorry, Mr. Brennan. Your Honor, objection. Can we have a sidebar, please? It's important.
Okay?
The coloring in those cups, do you know firsthand what that comprised of, what the item was?
Are you asking me if I knew what the contents specifically of the cup
Yes.
were? No, I do not.
And so the red cups with the red spots stored in them, do you know the circumstances surrounding the effort made to try to preserve that evidence?
Can you just be more specific in what you mean by circumstances?
Sure. Do you know where those red cups came from?
I was told they were collected from the scene. I don't have firsthand knowledge of the collection.
And you weren't at the scene that morning, were you?
No, I was not.
Do you know that what the circumstances or the challenges were that morning?
No, I'm not aware.
You said that you respond to active scenes and sometimes, like in this case, after the event happens?
Yes, that's correct.
Is there a difference when you're at an active scene as opposed to when you arrive at a scene that is past the event?
I would say multiple units are working at the same time, attempting to document, preserve, and collect evidence.
You were asked a few questions about the top back of the Lexus SUV.
Yes, that's correct.
When you were first asked the question, you were asked if you had studied that area, and you said you didn't recall if you looked at that area.
I did look at the area. I looked over the entire vehicle, but I didn't know anything specific in that area, no.
When you say you looked over the entire vehicle, did you look over the back of the vehicle as well?
Yes, the only part I did not look at was the roof of the vehicle.
Did you study all sides equally? Did you spend time with the entire vehicle?
I believe I made an effort, yes, to look at the entire vehicle.
When you studied the back of the vehicle, not the right side or left side, the back, middle, did you find any hair?
I did not note any hair, no.
Did you find any scratches?
The only scratches I noted were ones that I had spoken of previously on the right.
When you looked at the left side of that Lexus, did you find any dents or scratches?
Nothing that I noted, no.
Did you find any hair on that side of the car?
Not that I noted, no.
Did you find any dents, scratches, or hair anywhere but on other than the right side quarter of that Lexus?
I did not note any. I also did not examine the interior of the vehicle.
You said that you removed the hair. What do you do after you remove the hair?
The hair is placed into a small glassine envelope, then placed into a larger manila envelope, and then I signed and sealed it, gave it the appropriate case number and item number, and then secured it in our storage room.
Can that hair be further tested?
Yes.
Is that something you would do or a different person?
I don't perform testing on the hair. I performed a microscopic examination of it, and then additional testing can be performed by a different unit.
Let me ask you some questions about where you found the hair. You saw the two different angle pictures yesterday that you described.
Yes, I saw 2 pictures of that hair yesterday.
You were also shown some video where the car had snow and ice on it. Is water a conduit? Does water ever act as an adhesive?
Objection, Your Honor.
Watch the form of the question.
Okay. Why don't I show you a similar video that you were shown yesterday, but we've clarified it so it's more clear. I'm going to ask you to take a look at video 125. Can we stop that, please? And can you see that's 5:51:54 p.m. on 1/29/22?
Yes.
When you first saw this vehicle, it didn't have that snow on the right back near that taillight, did it?
Objection, Your Honor.
Ask it differently, Mr. Brown.
When you saw this vehicle for the first time, did it have that snow packed into the back right of the car?
No, to the best of my recollection, there was no snow on the vehicle when I saw it.
And the hair where you found it, you see the red back taillight, the piece of red that's showing?
I do see that, yes.
In reference or relative to that red, was the hair to the right, left, below?
I don't recall at this time.
Okay. Do you see the ice or snow on the right side quarter panel of that Lexus?
I don't see it on the quarter panel. I'm not sure what you're speaking of.
If we could move that video forward, please, to 702. And then to 749, please. Stop. Go forward just a little bit, please. Stop. Okay. There's still remnants of snow. Did it look like that when you first saw it?
No, I believe I did not see any snow on the vehicle when I saw it.
If you could fast forward, please. Thank you. You can take that down. Thank you. You were asked if you had any information about when damage occurred,
Yes, that's correct.
and you offered us you don't have no idea, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
No, I do not know when the damage occurred.
You were asked whether or not damage existed on that car prior to that day, prior to January 29, 2022. You remember that question?
Yes.
Did you know there are ring videos of that car from January 28, 2022?
No.
I want to show you some photos and ask you a few questions. If we could have 147C, please. If you could close up. Do you remember what that's a picture of or a photograph of?
Yes.
What is it?
That is a tear that was on the right sleeve of the gray sweatshirt.
The threads coming from the side of that hole?
Yes.
Those threads, could you pull those threads and pull them out by hand if you wanted to?
Can you repeat that question?
If you pulled on those threads, could you pull thread from that hole if you wanted to?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow that.
I don't know. I didn't attempt to pull at them at all.
Did you examine them to see if they were woven or loose, those threads?
Yes.
All right, you've been watching a testimony there from a forensic expert at the Karen Reed retrial in Dedham, Massachusetts. We'll get back to that. But want to start this hour, as we come up on 10 o'clock right now, on this Thursday, because it is day one of tournament play for the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow, and we need to talk about weather. So with that, we need to bring in meteorologist Chris Mulcahy. Hello, Chris.
Hello, good day to you.
Good day to you. Finally dealing with some sunshine now. But
yeah,
the grounds are soaked there at Quail Hollow, we've heard.
Yeah, and things definitely trending a better direction, so I'm happy to say that.
Good
so
to
for
hear.
your PGA tournament today is going to be dry. It's also going to be a lot warmer, 86 degrees, so let's bring it up. We have our golf bag under the tree here, ready to go. Temperature is right around 90 degrees on Friday, so we're going to be really close to our first 90-degree high. Upper 80s on Saturday. Both of those days are going to be humid as well, so 89 is actually going to be feeling like the lower 90s, so regardless if we hit 90 or not, it'll feel like 90. Then we're back to the mid-80s on Sunday. So this is still above average for this time of year. We should be about 80, so we're anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees above the norm. But also for this Thursday, I want to give you some nice improvements. The drought monitor, at one point about 3 months ago, had most of the Carolinas under an abnormally dry to a even severe drought status. So it just really depended where you were. But as you can see over the last months that we've slowly been seeing some improvements, but the most recent update that came down today, this is factoring data through Tuesday, is significant. So check that out. You're seeing a lot more gray on the map. The decrease that I've seen, it was about 3 months ago, North Carolina, 89% of the state was under an official drought. That number is now under 13%. So I'm really happy to say that even though it hasn't been the best weather for our golfers out there, at least it was some much needed rain. So the lawns will like it more. Just sadly, you're going to have to mow more if you have a lawn. High temperatures today, as I mentioned, the mid-80s. You have 76 degrees, not too bad, still feeling humid, so a little bit more details to your golf forecast as we're completing the hour. We're looking at temperatures in the lower to the mid-80s. I just think you have more clouds to end the day. So moving on, I think any rain, if we do see it, will be in the mountains, but for the most part, we just see more clouds to end the day. But by tomorrow morning, it's going to be a cloudier day. Any rain that we see for tomorrow, notice how you're seeing a little bit of green. There is a chance that we could have a light rain shower to start off the day, maybe a mist or drizzle, but then most of the day looks like it's going to stay dry. Any disturbance will remain off towards the north. But on Friday and Saturday, this is going to be sneaky warm, 89 to 88 degrees, so I just want you to keep that in mind. It's more humid than the last 88 we had in April 5th. So this is kind of sneaky hot. Don't overexert yourself. If you have a dry throat, I always say that's your time to drink water. That's your body telling you that I'm starting to head into the path of dehydration. Very simple, but that is the best, I think, telltale sign. That's usually number one that we have. Tomorrow, 89, but it's also 93 around the Chesterfield area. How we feel is going to be kind of in that uncomfortable range during this point. So as you're going to be going to the tournament, keep that in mind. But I also want to show you this detailed look for your Friday. Realistically feeling like the lower 90s throughout the afternoon, even though we're only in the upper 80s. Cruising forward for our rain chances as I complete our forecast leading up to this. Check this out. This is a classic pattern that you see actually a severe weather event to the northwest. Well, sometimes it keeps on going. And I think it's going to unravel, not a severe weather event once it reaches us, but this could bring us some rain on Saturday morning. So maybe early on, it could affect day 3 of the tournament. Should clear out, and we should have a drier afternoon. Another chance for rain heading into the evening. As far as amount of rain, seeing a lot of zeros on there. So drier for Charlotte, which is okay because we've had enough rain recently.
Yeah, no doubt. Why is this 88 stickier than last month's 88? How does that work?
It's mainly just because we're adjusting the jet stream. So typically during the springtime, it's drier anyways. We don't really have the tropical moisture that's starting to blossom. So as everything starts to warm up, including the Gulf, the Atlantic, that moisture, what happens when you heat things up, it rises up. So the warmer you get, the more evaporation you have from those waters. That's more moisture in the atmosphere, and that's why we typically have a lot more mugginess and moisture in the air as we head towards summer. So it's just kind of the rite of passage. We just have the right setup since we're warming up so much. It's also blasting in more moisture, because the warmer you are, the more moisture the air can hold.
Okay, very good. And the 7-day, if we wanted, Carlene and I were talking about washing our cars, so we need to know, will it last a while?
Yeah, check it out. Let's bring up our Guy Roofing 7-day forecast, wrap this up with a bow. We're actually looking at, I think, a dry trend, because I don't really anticipate too much rain. I think on Sunday and Monday you're going to be okay. Tuesday really trying to be dry. It's really not until next Wednesday. Wednesday is the next day that I think for sure it's going to rain, since they already have a 60%, which is likely that you're going to have that rain, but still staying warm. But the end of next week we will have the upper 70s. So your Guy Roofing definitely looking more like a June roofing forecast compared to a May one. So all in all, that's one thing that you need to know. Expecting a, I think maybe a break from the rain for most part for the Charlotte area. The Charlotte FC game, there's an outside chance that a storm could develop, but right now it is trending to be dry.
Do you golf?
I attempt to, Carlene. I enjoy being out there on the golf course. I like the things that come along with it.
Right.
But I feel like I spend most of my time looking for my ball than actually golfing.
Yeah, but that's part of the fun.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Not all of us can be Jordan Spieth. Not all of us will be Scotty.
I will say there's the one time I've ever hit it on a par 3 onto the green was one of the greatest feelings.
Yes.
So a good shot in golf, I understand why you keep on playing.
It's such a triumph.
Oh man. Yeah, no, and having my said child has taken some golf time away, and that's not a complaint whatsoever.
Right.
But I'm hoping that once he gets a little bit older to maybe get him out there. So maybe if I start him with golf earlier, he won't deal with the adult tribulations of losing more balls than you actually have. So
right.
Yeah, no, I love golf. I'm not a big watch it on TV. Going to a tournament like the PGA at Quail Hollow is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, if you're just golfing on your own because you want to get into the spirit of it, just drink plenty of water and hopefully it stays on the fairway.
Good advice. I missed part of the convo. You're bringing out little boy. Is he starting?
No, she asked me if I was good at golf, and I said I was atrocious. And I'm hoping that once JT gets older, that maybe I can. I won't teach him. My friends will teach him to be a good golfer. Because those that start early are fantastic.
Yes. I mean, Tiger started when he was 3 or 2.
No, the other day I got a hole-in-one on putt-putt.
Oh, putt-putt, yeah.
I know it's not the PGA. I know it's not the
But
LPGA.
weren't you celebrating?
I was pumped.
Totally.
Were there windmills involved?
No,
Oh,
no,
that's okay.
it was it was at the Puttery, so it had
Nice.
Oh,
little fake
nice.
cactuses and
Yes.
things like that. So
That's a fun place.
It was like I was outside.
They say putt for dough, so that's where it counts.
But yeah, my
Drive for show,
Yeah.
putt for dough.
Yeah.
I have to just give a shout out. I think it's called High Seas Golf, mini golf.
Okay.
Yeah, it's off the Charlotte Highway in Fort Mill. This is one of the best places. That it literally is has a pirate ship in the middle of it.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, I've seen that.
That's my only hole-in-one in Charlotte history was at that one. But the cool thing is you can pay, and you get if you pay once, you can play multiple rounds.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so if you're feeling like 36, 48, whatever whatever those numbers are, yeah.
8 hours.
Yeah, I've never made it past one, but it's an option. So I'm just saying, if you're into the Carlene mini golf, which I love that. I'm okay at that.
I'm about that. As long as and it's out of the rain, so as long as we can all be into it. Thank you, Chris Mulcahy. So fun, and a great weather forecast for the weekend. And of course, the PGA Championship, which is taking place starting today here in the Queen City at Quail Hollow. Sounds very good. All right, we are just past 10 o'clock this morning. It is a Thursday, and we have a very special guest right now because this week we have construction vehicles. They're actually building infrastructure, helping build America's infrastructure. They're rolling onto the National Mall for the celebration of construction. Who knew it was a thing, right? So I want to bring in right now the president and CEO of the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, Megan Tinnell, and this is a one-of-a-kind event, the second annual event. And Megan, thank you for joining us this morning, first of all.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. We're talking about the future of the American infrastructure, which really plays into the conversation that the president is trying to bring more manufacturing back to America. Talk to me, first of all, about this event. What is the celebration of construction?
Yeah, you mentioned it is a very unique event. It's not often that you'll see large construction equipment coming up and lining the National Mall right here in our nation's capital, and not to do a specific project, but to highlight and celebrate the industry. I heard you just talking about golfing and the PGA. Have you looked at the grass on the National Mall? Oh my gosh. I mean, it almost looks like the PGA people were keeping that as clean as they can. But with us having the construction equipment there, it's a great opportunity to celebrate the technology and the innovation that we have in the industry. And we're able to meet with the general public. We've got families coming in with their kids, climbing all over this equipment, learning about it. At the same time, we're educating our policymakers. You know, members of Congress are coming out to learn more about what's happening with manufacturers within their own states and at a national level. And then we've got regulatory authorities. The EPA is coming out, OSHA, MSHA, to learn about what the advancements mean for the future of our infrastructure.
Yeah, what does this say, the message that it sends about the importance of construction in the U.S.?
Yeah, you know, it's a really old industry and it's not going to go away. And I know it might frustrate people at times, but really it's so important that we have to get back on track on keeping up with the safe building of our roads and our bridges. Nobody wants to see our infrastructure crumble. And the opportunity that we have this week on the National Mall is to talk about how that technology and innovation in the industry helps us to do that more efficiently, more sustainably. We've got electric equipment out here, hybrid equipment, autonomous equipment, equipment that's using AI and telematics. It's a very different industry from what it used to be. And we have to celebrate and make sure that we're using this technology to be more sustainable when we're thinking about our world and our infrastructure.
Wow, fascinating that AI and construction are going to go hand in hand here, looking into the future. And what does that mean for job creation then?
So we represent 2.3 million men and women in all manufacturing on a national level. For you there in North Carolina, you've got about 87,000 jobs just in the construction industry alone. From a national level, we put about $316 billion into our gross GDP. Again, for North Carolina, that's about $11.3 billion. So it's a significant industry right there in your own state. And there's a lot of opportunity for jobs here. We are forecasting to be short almost 2 million people in the manufacturing industry over the next 10 years. And so we've got to, one, get more people to come into this industry, and two, embrace this innovation and new technology to upskill people, or we might have to take some of these jobs, right, and use the technology in place of a person, not taking away a person's job, offering that person the opportunity to upskill or learn something new and continue on in this industry.
Are we seeing that kind of equipment in practice right now, AI or autonomous manufacturing, construction equipment? Wow,
yes,
how does that work?
Absolutely. So the autonomous equipment has already been working in mining. They're just like some states are trying out the autonomous vehicles for whether it's a taxi or an Uber or a Lyft or whatever it might be, we're doing the same thing in construction. So when you're on the job site, the opportunity to have some of this autonomous equipment really leads to a safer job site. You know, when you're driving down your interstate or driving down your roads, some people go a little too fast next to those road crews, and it would really be a big safety opportunity for us to have autonomous equipment to protect some of those workers and keep them a little farther off that line.
What is the discussion or conversation like attracting new workers? You said that we're short millions of people now going into this new generation of construction and construction equipment.
Yeah, we are really working on changing the perception of what this industry is. It's not the old school, just hard hat getting dirty. I mean, it can be if that's what you're looking for, but there's also a lot related to the technology side of things. We're able to train people to be certified operators. We're able to teach people that to build the future smart cities, right, that we're all going to be moving towards. But the biggest thing is that this industry offers family-sustaining wages. The construction industry actually pays, on average, 33% above the national average. So whether you're just graduating from high school, maybe from college, there's a job here for you, and it's one that'll get you kind of, you can establish yourself a little bit, right? Start paying off some bills, or get out there and buy that new car or that new truck you've been looking at.
All right, it all sounds good. It's part of getting into that workforce. Is this something that the U.S. is leading as far as the industry goes? Are we playing catch up with these kinds of autonomous and AI-driven vehicles?
That is such a great question. So the positive is that the members that the equipment manufacturers that we represent really are on a global scale, and we work collaboratively with associations around the world. And so we'll share best practices, and we'll work together with standards development on autonomous vehicles, right? The safety side of that. But I'll tell you, as far as money being spent on our infrastructure, we are very much behind. You know, we used to have the best infrastructure in the world, and we don't see that anymore. And so we need to change that. We need to put some money into the industry, make sure that we're building safe, reliable roads and bridges, and providing family-sustaining jobs to the next generation.
The vision in the next decade or so with equipment, infrastructure, how they go hand in hand in America, what would you say that is, Megan?
The vision, well, I see us working in higher tech jobs that you might not have as much of the manual labor, but you'll have people working with some of this technology to be have a very clean, environment, working environment, as well as overall environment. Some sustainability practices that aren't even considered; they're just part of our life. We'll have better water, right? We'll have cleaner air. And we'll have more people working and able to support their families.
This is what we all want. All right, what can people do if they need more information?
Yeah, if you're not here with me in Washington, D.C., you're able to get on the National Mall this week, please go visit our website at aem.org. That's aem.org. You can learn about the celebration of construction, you can learn about the industry, or you can learn about the jobs available.
All right, Megan Tennell joining us this morning. A lot of great information. Love seeing all the videos of the kids jumping on that equipment.
It's the best part, right?
What is it about kids loving just like big trucks and
But it's not just kids; it's the adults too, right?
That's true.
Oh my gosh, look at this! And you get to climb up on some of like an excavator or something. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. All right, Megan, thank you again for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
We are back out here in the Live Impact studio about 10:11 on Thursday morning. Right now, I'll take you back out to Dedham, Massachusetts, where the Karen Reed retrial is taking place. The next witness taking the stand right here is a forensic pathologist. You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
The manner of death is undetermined.
When you are conducting an autopsy and making an analysis and attempting to reach a conclusion, you said when you looked at in a case, is your case and what you do different than procedure in a prosecution's case?
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure I understand.
I can. When you're making your determinations about cause or manner of death, do you have any limitations?
Okay, so the cause of death is something that is determined by the autopsy. That is my opinion or our office opinion as to the disease or injury that led to that person's death. So that is, I don't have any major limitations unless we're dealing with cases where, the body's decomposed and we're not able to do, all the testing necessary. But in most cases, the cause of death depends on my findings during the autopsy. The manner of death, yes, there are limitations because it's circumstance driven, and so the circumstances might not be known to us at the time of the autopsy. They might not be known to us ever, and therefore, while the cause of death is my medical opinion, the manner of death depends on information I get from other people.
Are you always able to reach a conclusion on manner of death?
No, that's why I said that in cases that we cannot, that manner of death is classified as undetermined.
I want to now ask you about whether or not you examined John O'Keefe.
Yes, I did the autopsy on Mr. O'Keefe.
When you examined Mr. O'Keefe, did you work with a team or by yourself?
No, we always work in a team. The team is made up of the medical examiner and a medical examiner's assistant that helps with the actual performance of the autopsy, especially when we examine the head. And then, of course, we work with the toxicology lab and, in this particular case, our neuropathologist.
The medical examiner's office, is that a division of the Massachusetts State Police?
No.
Is it a division of the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office?
No.
Is the medical examiner's office independent?
Yes.
When you conduct an autopsy, are representatives of law enforcement or district attorney's office able or allowed to attend an autopsy?
Yes, they're usually allowed to attend the autopsy if they wish.
Is that an uncommon practice?
No, it's not uncommon.
Would you remember when your autopsy of Mr. O'Keefe occurred?
Yes, I performed the autopsy on January 31st of 2022.
If you have notes,
yes, I do.
I think you'll be able to use them, but we'll just want to indicate that you're reading from your notes if that's the case. Thank you.
So you can use your notes, Doctor. Just
thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. When you began the autopsy of Mr. O'Keefe, do you know who, if any, representatives from the Massachusetts State Police or the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office were present?
I don't remember their names. I do believe there were 2 individuals, and every person who attends an autopsy has to sign a log, and their names would be logged in our records. I don't remember their names.
What is the role of law enforcement relative to the actual physical autopsy? Do they have any role?
No, they're not part of the autopsy. They don't have a role. Their role is to observe. Sometimes they will ask questions, and based on my findings, they might, go on and do their investigation.
Does your office photograph things of interest, like injuries on the person that you're doing the autopsy on?
Yes, we do.
Is law enforcement allowed to take their own photographs as well?
Yes.
Did you, in fact, memorialize your findings in this case?
I did.
Are there a number of different ways in which you memorialize your findings?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I took notes, physical notes, pen and paper. There's a report that's issued within 90 days of the completion of the autopsy, and then photographs, digital photographs.
You mentioned a report is due in 90 days. Is that often referred to as an autopsy report?
Yes.
Why 90 days?
That is the standard that is set by the National Association of Medical Examiners. We're part of NAME, and therefore we try to have a finalized report for all our cases within 90 days, because we know that families are waiting for these reports, and therefore we do our best to finish a report within 90 days.
Did you, in fact, complete a so-called autopsy report in this case?
Yes, I did.
In addition to the autopsy report, well, included in the autopsy report, do you make handwritten notations about locations of injuries?
Yes.
And share with us how's that done. Is there a picture or a graph?
There's a diagram, a body diagram that we use to mark the location of injuries.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
May I?
Yes.
Do you generally recognize what these documents are?
Yes, these are my diagrams from Mr. O'Keefe's autopsy.
And could you just very basically describe each one of them?
Some of them. Yes, the first one is a body diagram. A lot of things have been whited out, but it's the diagram that I would use to make note of any injuries. The second one is a diagram of the face and the skull. I would also use this diagram to make notes as to any injuries on the face. And the third one is a diagram of the inside of the skull, what we call the base of the skull, as well as different views of the brain itself. Again, I would make notes to point out different injuries.
As you are noting injuries in your autopsy report, these diagrams, they start off blank?
They start off blank and then they're filled out as we go along.
And you fill out all the details you find important in your report?
Correct.
For reference, and to assist us, I have some blank diagrams that I may ask you to point out things on the blank diagram for us.
Okay.
And Your Honor, I'd ask permission. I've spoken to defense to use these simply as a chalk.
Sure.
No objection, Your Honor.
Before you begin an autopsy, do you seek any medical records if available?
Yes. When a case is called into our office, depending on the time and the day that it is called in, our intake department, who are the people initially on the phone taking the information, will start asking for both medical records as well as police reports. So in the morning, when we start the autopsy, it's possible that we have some records. Sometimes if a decedent is brought to us from the hospital, there might be some records that come along with the body. But to answer your question, yes, we always ask for medical records, what we call PCP records, which are primary care physician records, any records from a hospital where the decedent may have been, and investigative reports, police reports.
Do you recall whether you had access to John O'Keefe's medical records from Good Samaritan Hospital?
I did have access, yes, in the day, I believe the day of and the following day.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Subject to any later reactions, I would move the Good Samaritan medical records into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 155.
This time I would move for identification all photos of Mr. O'Keefe's injuries at Good Samaritan Hospital just for identification.
Okay. Exhibit JJ for ID.
Further, this time I'd move for identification all OCME, Office of Medical Examiner photos.
Okay. Exhibit KK for ID.
Thank you. One more. Your Honor, at this time I'd move all CSSS autopsy photos for identification.
May I just have an understanding of the evidence?
With the court's permission, Ms. Gilman, if you could put up the diagram, full body. If you could enlarge that a little more. Thank you very much. Could you explain this to us?
Yes, this is the diagram that we use during every autopsy. As you can see, we note the name of the decedent. Every case has its own number. In this case, it was 22-1697. And then we take note of, as I mentioned, during the external examination, physical characteristics such as hair, eyes, teeth. And then on this diagram, we would note any scars we see on the body, any tattoos we see on the body, any injuries we see on the body, and any therapeutic interventions. Those would be things that are sometimes done either by emergency medical personnel or at the hospital. Everything would be noted on this diagram.
Now, if you could take us through, I'm going to ask you, we'll go body part by body part, if that's okay. I'm going to ask you to begin with Mr. O'Keefe's face, the front of his face. And if you,
Yes.
if you could enlarge that, Ms. Gilman. Thank you very much. Did you notice any injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's face? And if so, could you, I think there's a pointer available for you, Doctor? If you could
Yes.
point out on the diagram what you observed.
So on the diagram, well, first of all, there was medical intervention on Mr. O'Keefe that included an endotracheal tube that had been placed to help him breathe. But once all the intervention, all the medical devices were removed, I observed on his right upper eyelid a 1 centimeter laceration. So as we're looking at the diagram, this is the right side and this is the left side. So on his right eyelid, there was a small laceration. I also observed abrasions on the anterior and the left aspect of the nose. So the nose would be here on the front and the left aspect. Abrasions are scrapes. Lacerations are tears in the skin. I should probably explain that. Then there was some bleeding and some swelling of the eyelids of both eyes.
Does that complete your analysis?
For the front of the face, correct, yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus as the attorneys in the Karen Reed retrial approach the judge's side table there. Just taking a live look right now, top right-hand side of your screen, appropriations subcommittee meeting on the Department of Homeland Security is taking place right now. This is an oversight hearing with Acting Commissioner Pete Flores. That's happening in D.C. And then bottom right side of your screen, protests taking place outside the Supreme Court in D.C. A number of groups there, including D.C. CASA, just rallying outside as arguments are protesting birthright citizenship rights in the U.S. But we'll go back to the Karen Reed retrial that's taking place live out of Massachusetts.
All right, we'll just get evidence and ask for instruction.
Okay.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. So, folks, during the testimony of Dr. Scorti-Bello, photos will be introduced to you. They're photographs of John O'Keefe that Dr. Scorti-Bello from the autopsy. So you'll have them in the jury room with you. I'll put them in an envelope, or I'll ask that they be put in an envelope. So if you don't want to look at them now, you don't have to. At some point, we'd ask that you make sure you look at it. These photos are not pleasant, and you may find that they're graphic. But what's important for you to know is that your verdict must not in any way be influenced by the fact that these photographs may be unpleasant or graphic. The defendant is entitled to a verdict based solely on the evidence and not based on pity or sympathy for Mr. O'Keefe, which might be occasioned by these photographs. So consider the photographs only as they draw your attention to a clinical, medical status, or to the nature of Mr. O'Keefe's injuries, or to the nature of the incident itself. So they'll be displayed up on the screen for you as well.
The last exhibit is Exhibit 156.
Thank you.
Ms. Gilman, could you show the jury?
All right, folks, we are going to break away from what sounds like are going to be graphic pictures of an autopsy regarding the deceased, John O'Keefe, the victim in the homicide that Karen Reed is being charged with, second-degree manslaughter there. But we will take you now here live, taking this full, the House Customs Border hearing. There's an oversight hearing with the Appropriations Subcommittee on Department of Homeland Security.
We have the third largest crossing, the Columbia Bridge, which we're waiting for a presidential permit. It's the second largest in Texas. So Laredo has basically number one and number three in the whole southern border. So I'm very interested in the men and women in blue and the technology that y'all are looking at. And finally, the last thing I want to make a comment, and you can respond, is the cameras. As you know, FAA, somebody came up with a bright idea to put it all together, and the FAA was handling the maintenance. It's like asking Border Patrol to go on air traffics, and I think hopefully that was changed now. But in my area, 1/3 of the cameras are working, 2/3 are not working, unless if those numbers have changed. But to say 1/3 of the cameras are not working, I know we're waiting for upgrades, that's not good for border security. Last point has to do with contracting. You mentioned that, you know, the tents, and those tents, I know some were coming from Rome, New York, and other places. But a lot of it, when the numbers went down, I don't know what the right term is. Y'all had this warm status. Y'all should have gotten rid of that, because we're paying millions and millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars, and y'all just got to do a better job at contracting and getting a better deal, and then just letting those, whatever it is, warm status going in. To that. And talking about warm, let me go to warm. Farm, there's a big detention center in Laredo, $280 million. I call it a woke type of project where for the sewage, y'all want to use worm. Apparently, y'all use it in California. That's fine in California. But the city of Laredo is willing to put sewage lines and work with you. This, I'll call it a woke project. I mean, just that worm thing. The rest is good. The detention center is good. But I would like to have a follow-up on all that.
Sure.
And I know we don't have enough time, but be happy to sit down with you. And for the record, tell Mr. Scott that I was very kind to you. It was very kind.
Congressman, thank you for the question. We'll definitely get back to you. We recognize all those projects. They are on our priority, and as obviously as we get through ability to fund many of that, and some have already funded in regards to the Laredo checkpoint. So we're on track with that going forward.
And the detention center, what about that warm?
So the warm status that we put them in is because of the unpredictability that we had during the surges that we were seeing from illegal crossing. So we wanted to make sure that we were not going to be out of capacity, since with the new administration and the numbers that we saw consistently being down, we went through the process as soon as we could in order to scale down. And every one of those soft-sided facilities we no longer operate in.
Yeah. Well, this is a heart facility. They closed the tents, and we're talking about heart facility. You're a congressional affairs person, is very familiar with that. I don't have a problem. I support that detention center. I just have a problem with the warm form when the city's willing to connect sewage lines to y'all. But anyway, thank you so much, and I appreciate your service and your men and women that work for y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. The chair now recognizes the vice chair of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Arizona, home of the 5 Cs, copper, cattle, cotton, citrus, and climate. Mr. Siscomani, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
You're really doing a great job today, Chairman. All the personalized.
I'm exhausted, but go right ahead.
It's great. It's great. Thank you, Acting Commissioner. Thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for your leadership in this very important issue to the entire nation. I represent Arizona's 6th congressional district. It's in the southeastern part of the state, so in the border with Mexico. I've had the opportunity to visit countless times with your OFO officers, with the CBP agents and the AMO agents as well. And I'm always very impressed with their grit, even through the hardest times in the last few years, just how they were able to show up and keep doing the job in spite of everything else going on. So I have a lot of pride in representing them in Congress. I have a large number of them in my district, living in my district. So it's I want to ask a question here on an issue on the EFRS issue that we're seeing. It's my understanding that federal law enforcement officers face mandatory retirement at age 57, which we know, but can retire earlier if they have 20 years in service and are over 50, or even younger if they have 25 years of service. This applies for law enforcement under CBP, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And how many CBP personnel do you have who are eligible for retirement today, and how many will be eligible in the next couple of years?
So just on the retirement issue, just start with, you're correct in regards to, so we have officers, agents, any other CBP law enforcement personnel. So at the age of 50 with 20 years worth of service can retire. At any age with 25 years worth of service can retire in regards if they're a Leo. In regards to our numbers of retirement, so we look at CBP has currently a little over 67,000 employees in CBP right now. If we look at our current number of those eligible to retire, we're somewhere right about 5,900 individuals that are employees that are able to retire. Within that 5,900 that are eligible to retire, we have another 3,300 of those that are Leos or law enforcement that are eligible for retirement.
Great, thank you for that. Under the federal employee retirement system that I mentioned, there's federal law enforcement officers receive a supplement to their annuity when they retire to bridge them until they become eligible for Social Security at age 62. Our colleagues on the House Oversight Committee recently reported out legislation as part of the reconciliation process that would have required a federal law enforcement officer to work until they are 57 to receive this supplement. I have a huge Border Patrol presence in my district, as I mentioned earlier, and I personally know agents who, because of injuries, really struggle to make it to retirement eligibility, let alone the mandatory retirement age of 57. Specifically, when I've gone over on the far remote areas of the border, and I realized the terrain that these agents are going up and down, and I've heard the stories of how their knees give out at in their 40s sometime, and even earlier, and the injuries that they have. The Arizona border is a very unique border, as you know, in the southern part there, because of, again, the terrain. Some areas you can't even build a barrier because of that. It's very different than some of the other neighboring states. So anecdotally, I've heard from these agents and their retirement papers right now that they're putting in because they fear that they will not be able to physically make it to the age of 57, which is because of what I just described as well. So is this something that that you're tracking on that with the men and women working in your department, and how might this provision removing supplemental pay may impact your agency and also your recruitment efforts and retainment efforts?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. So we track retirements on a regular basis on what we're seeing in regards to employees putting in for retirement. In regards to anything that is added or taken away, obviously Congress will have that input on what happens next on whether or not any of the language or what that language looks like in reconciliation or anywhere else. I can tell you from my personal experience, anytime we have or there is discussion about potential impacts to employees' pay or benefits, there is some impact to that in regards to at least our current employees, right? When you start talking about impacts to current employees' benefits and pay, there is some impact and concern from our existing employees.
Well, I go back to my district every weekend, spend a lot of time out and about from on the field in football games or at the grocery store and or church, and every time I right now talking to someone in the federal law enforcement, this is the number one issue on their mind and what we're working on here. So something that we're addressing, and wanted to make sure what your thoughts were on that in terms, again, of the recruitment part, but also in the retention right now, given the numbers that you have and the ones that are eligible for retirement. This is the time that we need our workforce and our experienced workforce to be on this, and that's why I think it's important to fix that, and we will. So thank you, sir, for being here, and thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Chairman, you're back.
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Aloha Country. Since we're talking about new states these days, not that it's exactly new, but the 50th state, at least some people believe that. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
I don't know how to respond to that, actually. I've got some witty comments having to do with the 51st state, but I think I'll just pass.
I figured you would, which is why I tried to defer to you.
Thanks for baiting me. Mr. Flores, first of all, thanks for your service. I think I counted 37 years or so. Right. So you've been on the front line for a long time. Appreciate your stepping into this role. What I want to do is follow up on a line of questioning that I had with the Secretary when she testified about the cost benefit of a border wall. And let me give you some context. First of all, I've been to the border 3 times myself. I've talked with many of your officers on the ground. I believe, and I believe it may be the consensus of some of the officers on the ground, that we definitely need to rehabilitate, expand, and extend the border wall in some parts, but not all 1,954 miles. I'm not going to speak for them, but that's my conclusion. So what I'm interested in is understanding the where the administration is trying to go and what are the consequences of doing that. So my understanding is that in FY 2024, continued to 2025, Customs and Border Protection was funded at about $19.6 billion. The skinny budget doesn't specifically call out CBP, but it's a level funded budget, and I don't think that there is an assumption of an increase for CBP in the skinny budget. But reconciliation clearly front loads CBP to the tune of about $64.9 billion, which is 3 times more than the annual funding, of which $46.5 billion is to build the border wall. So that means that of the entire reconciliation budget, 71.6% is allocated to a border wall in the CBP, which is twice the annual budget of all of CBP. $0.8 billion to border surveillance, which I think we would all agree is also an important part of actually securing our border. My question to Secretary Noem was this. That's a heck of a lot of money to put into a border wall. And if we've seen such a drastic decrease in entries into this country, which is good news, by the way, congratulations to everybody that pulled that off. But if we've got this under control from a non-1954-mile border wall, then why are we investing that much in a border wall? And so the subsidiary part of the question is, does that $46.5 billion assume, what's the assumption under that? How much wall does that buy, $46.5 billion?
So, Congressman, thank you for the question. So within CBP, in our evaluation, we've recognized needs in regards to expanding border walls, not just the border wall system. So infrastructure is one thing. When you talk about infrastructure, an actual physical infrastructure, a wall, and you can talk about border roads and access roads, which become equally as important. But the border wall system also includes technology. So that means we're talking about fiber optic cable, we're talking about sensors, we're talking about cameras, autonomous cameras, and that all combining together and to systemize just a border wall system in what we're doing. So what we have planned for in regards to needs that we have, so based on support from the committee, operationalizing what some of those needs are in regards to border wall, border barrier, both primary wall and secondary wall,
Okay.
but it includes the technology as well.
All right, cool. And I'm fine with all of your technology, and I'm fine with all of that, border roads, and I'm fine with everything else in terms of, taking care of our agents. But I guess my specific question is, what's the assumption as to a physical barrier, an extension of that barrier? Because $46.5 billion is a lot of money to spend when, the administration says that it has solved the problem already. So my question is, from a cost-benefit perspective, what assumption are we making with the border wall in that 46.5? The wall itself.
So the wall itself, we recognize the operational need and the funding in order to build, and we don't have the funding for that. We've used our current funding in order to build the current wall that we have either in some type of planning or construction phases.
I don't mean to. I'm really trying to get to how much wall did you put in your projections of 46.5 billion? What is the assumption there? Is that the entire border? Is it half the border?
So it will not include the entirety of the border. So we have a little less than 2,000 miles along the border. So we recognize that there are areas, geographic areas and terrain out there where a border wall does not make sense for us.
Do you know how many of those miles you are assuming in that 46.5 billion number?
So in regards to primary border barrier, I can tell you that our operational need of what we've identified from a primary border barrier, we're about 700 miles of primary border
Okay, so that's the assumption in the 46.5 billion.
That's what we have in our planning so far, operational need.
And just quickly, what time frame does that assume? Because what you're doing is you're committing this appropriations committee to funding of that over time, which takes out of the other goals, which is why reconciliation and budgeting is a bad idea. What's the time frame, 10 years?
So what we have right now is just a planning stage of what our operational needs are based on whether or not funding is provided. When we get the funding, we will determine what the time frame is there. But we are working to shorten that time frame as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from the state whose name I guess means friendly in one of the native languages, and obviously the Lone Star State. Mr. Gonzalez, the floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And Pete, great to see you here. You've done a great job as commissioner. Thank you and the men and women that work underneath you, alongside you for everything that you're doing. I want to start with, my district. I've got 4 sectors in it. I've got a small piece of Laredo, Del Rio sector, Big Bend sector, and El Paso sector. And each one is completely different than the next. Let's start with the El Paso sector. I want to bring to your attention that at Fort Hancock, the port of entry at Fort Hancock, the hours have been reduced due to COVID-19, and they never got returned. I mean, COVID was 5 years ago, and the hours are still limited because of that. So my question is, are there any plans? And I understand staffing, and you're trying to navigate it all, but it is seriously a safety issue for the residents in Hudspeth County that rely on that port of entry to make their way to Mexico back and forth. Do you have any plans to reevaluate our land port of entries that currently operate under reduced hours, specifically pre-COVID hours?
So, Congress, thank you for the question. Good to see you again. Absolutely. So we do a continuous evaluation of what our operational tempo is and what our hours are at all our locations that we do, the 328 ports of entry that we have. So we want to make sure from an operation tempo that we're meeting the demand of what's happening at our ports of entry. So we do that evaluation, and we consistently reevaluate whether or not the hours meet the demand and needs on what we have. What we do recognize is that based on limited staffing and resources, that we have to put our staffing to where the need is, and then scale down operations as best as possible in order to ensure that we're taking care of needs across the board, but ensuring that staff is dedicated to primary locations where we're seeing the need for increased traffic. But we do reevaluate consistently on what port hours should be.
Sure. I'd ask you to take a look at the Fort Hancock port of entry. Hudspeth County often gets forgotten for a lot of different reasons, and that is an important issue for me. I want to talk about Stone Garden. Stone Garden, I think, is a program that has been very successful. You know, for those of us who voted for the CR last year, we were able to get a variety of different amounts in. I know El Paso County was able to get 3.7 million, but there's a disparity in some of the grant awardees, right? Other parts of my district, Frio County got 165K, LaSalle County got 186K. All grateful, all good stuff. But as you're going through this on the as we're working through the reconciliation process on the Homeland Authorization side, we put 450. Hopefully it stays, but we put 450 million in there over a 5-year period. I would just ask that you kind of evaluate, make sure that it's going to some of these areas, because in many cases it's these smaller counties that are still getting hit. And that leads me, actually, before I go into that part, I'd like to hear your thoughts on, a lot of times that's used for overtime, but equipment is one of the basic necessities, communicating. And in many parts of my district, you just cannot communicate with others. What are your thoughts on trying to expand the Stone Garden program to maybe just radios or having some things like that? Just love to get your thoughts on the communication piece to just the problems that along the border.
Congress, thanks for the question. Agree from a I'll start with Stone Garden perspective there, that it's an important aspect of what we do with being able to work law enforcement issues with our state and locals in the county. As we know, like some of you, born and raised in a small border town in Calexico, California. So understand the need of how small some of the law enforcement is and the support needed, and the ability to communicate becomes essential, like in most situations, or regular routine and emergency situations. So what we can do in regards to the request, in regards to Stone Garden, we will look into what that looks like in regards to equipment and communication and what that is. A lot of those requests that they come in are based on the agency themselves, right? The state and local agencies themselves putting in their operational order on the needs and kind of what the cooperation will be on that, on how we meet those needs under Stone Garden.
Well, I'd love to continue to work together with you on modernizing the program. We just can't write blank checks and think it's going to solve itself. Like, how do we make sure that those funds our taxpayer dollars are going down to meet the need? And sometimes it's not personnel. Sometimes it is equipment, like communications. My last question is on the Big Bend sector. I mean, we talk about these other sectors get a lot of attention, but the Big Bend sector, in my eyes, is an area that hasn't slowed down, that continues to have a lot of foot traffic on a daily basis. You know, a lot of people are traveling through the desert on that area. In that area in particular, once again, it's not an easy place to get to, and I understand the population is low, but from a Big Bend sector, is there anything that we can do to help, some of the local communities? What I'm hearing from my ranchers is just, they have, like, for everyone else, they've gotten relief. That area continues to be a hotbed. Just in the Big Bend sector in particular, is there anything that we can do to maybe alleviate some of their high foot traffic?
Thank you for the questions, Congressman. We continue to look at our high traffic areas and reevaluate that. With the support that we're getting, being able to put agents back to do law enforcement work, the ingestion of technology that we have and refocusing some of that technology with the help of DOD and the technology, the help of DOD personnel on the border to help close off some of those areas are all areas that we're focusing on. So we continue to plan for where we see problem spots or hot areas along the border, and we continue to reevaluate how we're deploying our agents, how we're working with DOD to deploy their personnel, and then what our coverage is in the air in regards to bring visibility to those problem areas. We'll continue to work towards 100% situational awareness, and that's our plan right now, to get to that 100% situational awareness so we can ensure that we know what's coming across the border. And then ultimately, in ensuring that we know what's coming across the border, being able to effect an enforcement action on that. The enforcement and deterrence piece on the consequences seems to have a good deterrence in alleviating some of those hot spots.
Right. Well, thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony today. Look forward to continuing to work together. And Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady from high altitude Texas, which we may be the 2 highest altitude residents of districts in Congress. I don't know about Mr. Newhouse, but he's not here, so he doesn't count today. The floor is yours for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and Madam Ranking Member. Commissioner Flores, thank you for being here, and thank you for your service to our country. I am blessed to represent the beautiful community of El Paso, Texas, and I'm a native, born and raised there, raised my children there, and my constituents recognize the importance of our land ports of entry. I think frequently Congress does not. You know, we get a lot of visitors from across the country who parachute in, they visit the border, take their selfies, leave. When I have folks visit the border, I always include our land ports of entry because they are key to our commerce, to our national economy. But what I have heard long before I was in Congress, from my neighbors, friends, et cetera, who work for CBP, is how understaffed our OFO personnel are. And it's been a chronic issue. It precedes my time in Congress, as I mentioned. And the staffing model, I think, needs to be reconfigured. And we need to think about different things in a new staffing model, including, for example, the El Paso sector, where one land port of entry is probably about 45 minutes away from another land port of entry. And when you're shifting personnel, we've got to take that timing into consideration. I was so proud to have supported the bipartisan infrastructure law, which has funding for a port modernization, the Bridge of the Americas, in the central part of my community. And as we increase POV traffic there, I again come back to thinking about staffing. And again, Congress frequently focuses on Border Patrol and the border when it comes to CBP. I would like to hear from you. How do we address our chronic understaffing with OFO?
Congresswoman, thank you for the question. So our workload staffing model is something we've developed now over several years, and it's been validated. I think to your point in regards to taking into consideration the time and distance of some of our locations is an important aspect and something that we're trying to ensure that it is incorporated into the workload staffing model. Current workload staffing model for OFO, at least the last numbers I saw, I believe, had them 5,000 people short based on current workload that the last time we did the assessment. So it's a validation tool for us on what the workload is. So agree that operationally, like the Border Patrol, Office of Field Operations is also short of the men and women performing the job at the ports of entry. And as you're well aware, in regards to the economics of what happens at a ports of entry in regards to daily travel, commuter travel, commercial trucks coming across the border, right? There's high value in what that is coming across the border. We continue to make process improvements as we, with your support and the committee support in regards to what additional staffing looks like, we continue to make operational improvements to help alleviate some of the stress of ports of entry in regards to technologies and way forward. Simplified entry was a great example of what we did in regards to being able to expedite traffic. As we look at trusted traveler and trusted trader programs, we have FAST and we have global entry, right? We have Sentry and those type of programs that today account for about 16 million people registered into those type of programs. So trying to expedite crossings across the border as we wait for additional staffing, hopefully, and funding for that to be able to fill some of those spots that we have, both in the passenger environment and in the cargo environment along all our ports of entry in the U.S.
Commissioner, would you commit to working with me on assuring that we have enough OFO personnel at our land ports of entry?
Will do, yes.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
perfect. I'd also like to work with you on Trusted Traveler because that is a high source of complaints from members of my community, including very well-respected members of the business community to, all sorts of folks from all walks of life. That program, when that privilege is revoked, it's like a black box. People can't get answers. So I'd like to work with you on that as well. I'm running out of time. I have one final question that is really important to me. We've seen the administration use members of our active duty military on the U.S.-Mexico border. How much training and how long is the training for Border Patrol, just very quickly, before they engage in border operations?
So the academy itself, I believe it's about 6 months.
And they get all sorts of really in-depth training. How much training do our active duty military get before they're put on border enforcement? Do you know?
So I'd have to leave that up to DOD, but I know based on my experience and over my career, we've had DOD at the border ever since I can remember.
Well,
in
aside
regards
from the Joint Task Force, I'm talking about the recent operations, where we're literally putting military personnel on the border to act as enforcement personnel. Do you know how much training they get?
So we do some cross-training with DOD personnel when they come on board in regards to relationship of what we're doing, and then they obviously DOD does their own training before.
And do you
but
know how?
I don't know how much training DOD is
It's
doing.
literally only hours, a few hours. And so I need to publicly express again my profound concern and alarm at the administration's decision to use military assets, military installations, and now active duty military for border enforcement.